Hello and welcome to Girl Awakening YouTube. I'm Jo Hendy.
And I'm Amanda Parker. Enjoy this episode of Girl Awakening in all of its vulnerable sacredness.
And remember to subscribe and share. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Jo.
Happy Wednesday.
Yay.
Yay. We're back again
We
with
are.
another incredible guest.
We've been waiting for her a little while. She's a very busy woman.
She is.
And in this incredible times around the energies that are here, as we've just been talking around the eclipse.
And
energies,
she's a Libra.
Yeah, she's
I'm
a
a
Libra.
Libra,
Yeah.
and you're an Aquarian. So it's all
And with the Mars
powerful.
and Libra, yeah.
Powerful times
Yeah.
for all three of
Very
us.
powerful.
So powerful.
This podcast is going to go through the roof. So, Mish Eagles was once upon a time,
Yes.
high up in corporate. She was actually a lawyer for a long time, and then moved into HR, working out the human relationships area.
Mhm.
And throughout her awakening journey, now helps leads corporates consciously and create greater awareness through what she's been through herself, and now sharing that with people that maybe she's worked with in the past, or
Absolutely.
people that actually want to shift into the area that we're all
Away from the old ways, the old structures, out of ego,
Yeah.
into that conscious corporate space, which can change so much in the world, such a powerful space. So
cracking the shell.
yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Mish.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. Lovely to be here with you. I feel like I'm sitting on the red seat, but even though I'm not, I'm in my rocking chair.
Oh, you've got the rocking chair. You're kind of like going to just sit back and share your wisdom.
I'm just relaxed.
We love it. We love it.
Yeah.
So, Mish, we're going to jump straight on in. What was your life like before, you kind of was aware of all the crap?
Awakened. Yeah.
I think I'd choose not to remember. No, look, oh, gosh. It kind of was what it was. I think at the time, I remember I sort of sharing before with you guys, the first time I started to see things differently was, I would have been about 7 or 8 or 9, and I was sitting in Mum and Dad's house and I saw a ghost. And well, what I don't know, the only ghost I'd ever seen before was Casper on the TV. So literally like just a white sort of silhouette figure of a hologram. And I sort of looked up and I sort of looked at it, and there was no face there. There was just this sort of outer silhouette. And someone sort of looked at me and said, "Oh, you look like you've just seen a ghost." And I said, "I have." Oh. And Mum was like, "Oh, don't be silly, in those days, sweetheart." And then about several weeks later, I was talking to someone and she said, "Oh, yeah, that was Mrs. Such and Such. She died in the house. She used to work for the Red Cross in the back of the house during the World War."
Wow.
And I was like, and I described, literally what I'd seen. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, that was her favorite nightie and her gown she used to wear." And I was like, "Oh, my gosh." So it was pretty crazy for me because, at that younger age, you sometimes don't understand if it's your imagination or what you see is actually real, because it's very hard to differentiate. And sort of I probably forgot about it, but I know throughout my childhood I always felt different. I didn't sometimes felt like I belonged. I sort of saw things that I couldn't quite understand, or they didn't make sense to me. I had the normal sort of, I guess, normal childhood upbringing, spent a lot of time on the water, which I was really grateful for. Dad had some boats growing up, so I was always very connected with the ocean. Used to lie on the front of the boat every night and look up at the stars. So there was a real connection for me just out in nature. And I was probably so grateful for those times because it got me away from the busyness of, the North Shore of Sydney where I grew up, and I found it quite intense and overwhelming, but probably didn't realize until now, maybe even though there were a lot of trees around, the energy was really intense. There was a lot of ego, in that area, not always a bad thing, but in hindsight, it's really insightful to be able to look back up with a different perspective.
Yeah, this is so interesting what you're saying, because I think a lot of us take that connection that we felt when we were younger for granted. Like, we don't put enough emphasis on like, yeah, I loved looking up at the stars.
Mm.
Yeah, because there was a connection there. And we
Yes.
make it like it's nothing. But now
Yes.
I'm realizing that those little things are all the first start, or the starting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of connection. Yeah.
And I've got so much more awareness now that I can have those conversations with my kids that are 12 and 8. And, you know, they can talk to me about what they see and what they feel and what they hear, because I know about it now. Whereas back then, you know, I remember probably the only thing I had that was connected to that was a book of dreams. And I begged Mum to buy me this book of dreams because I'd have the most lucid dreams as a child. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, what does that mean? And I'd research my dreams, and sometimes they'd make sense. Other times I'd have no idea, you know, what it was. But I remember dreaming vividly as a child.
And because as children, we are that we can have those vivid dreams, or we can often have nightmares as well, which can be those terrifying experiences can stay with us in ways that play out in real life. But my experiences with looking at the stars and things when I was younger in that natural world, for me, looking back on it, it's thinking around that we're still hearing the whispers of that world. Not closed off yet.
Yes.
But because our world around us isn't speaking the same language, we don't really find a place for it, and we kind of grow away from it. And as you're saying, like in the dense world of a busy city, there's no place for any of that, or, you know, like there's a routine of, you know, school and this and that kind of thing that takes over from that spirit world that we're tapping into occasionally. It's still alive a little bit.
Totally. And I think my parents knew that, but they didn't have the language to articulate it. You know, every Friday we'd either get in the car and we'd drive down to Cottage Point and, you know, get on the boat. And it was just that drive through the national park. It's almost like your shoulders just dropped and your body just breathes, and you're like, oh, you know, you just feel at one and relaxed again. You know, no matter how hectic the week had been, you could just get on the boat, you could fall asleep with the water lapping up against the side of the boat, you'd wake up the next day and you can jump in the ocean. You know, like those are probably some of the best of, you know, my childhood memories were the ones I choose to remember.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It sounds very familiar. I think a lot of us Aussie kids, you know, we either had that, or, you know, it was the city or overseas or whatever. But that whole, what you're talking about, just feels so grounding too, you know, just that every part of it. And there was no phone, there was none of that. So you'd be just swinging, and you'd be grounded, and your intuition was at play, and all these things that we were so unaware of at the time, but were naturally in us.
Yes. I mean, even Summer, my 8-year-old, said to me the other day, Mum, I'm really just like, I'm full. I need to go get in the ocean. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And I was like, go, like, let's just go. So we dropped everything and we went. And then she was diving under waves and just like reset her. But I mean, for an 8-year-old to have that awareness, I probably knew it, but I wouldn't have articulated that or be able to say that. And so that's really cool for me to think that there's that generation that's coming through now that has that connection and awareness of what they need from nature to help them, you know, feel more settled or regulate their nervous system from all of the intense energy that they have to deal with all day.
Yeah, well, that's because you've created a space for her to be able to feel that.
Yeah.
That's how it all starts.
Still
I'm reparenting myself at the same time.
That's you.
They need to be more transparent than you realise, and you've seen ways that they need to be, that they can do that as well.
Absolutely. That's a big one.
Those are beautiful memories to kind of, you know, like to have to be reconnect with as awareness of yourself, you know, as a young person, and what life was like before. You know,
the awakening, which we can jump on into now. So when was your first like recollection of, you know, like waking up and realizing, I mean, there's that as a child, but then, you know, we go through the school system and we do, it's almost like we're putting on coats to cover all that beautiful, you know, up. And then there comes a time where we start, there's probably one moment where we take a coat off and we realize, oh, wow, I remember that feeling. When was that for you?
I think I've had lots of them at different levels.
I
probably can't remember the first one, but I gradually remember, you know, over the years, as I guess I've had dark nights of the soul or whatever, you know, you each get to a level and then you're like, oh my gosh, like I now know better than what I knew back then. But probably one moment for me that has stuck with me was when I was in a courtroom in my early days as a lawyer, And I was probably one of my first or second court appearances, and I'd had an all-nighter, like trying to, just get my head around this case, because it was quite a great opportunity. And I was up against a barrister, and obviously the barrister had piles of files, and he may not have been aware of, what was going on. And it was just a simple mention, but I'd done all my research, and he was opposing the mention. And it was, I can't even remember the language now, but it was approved, and we got it. And I think he looked at me, and I could see him looking at me as I walked into the courtroom as a young female. And, the look that he gave me was almost like, I've got this, in the basket. And I just looked back I remember looking at him and just thinking, how arrogant of you to make a judgment of someone like me that you know nothing about. But that was the old system that was law back in those days. Like there still is, to be fair, a fair degree of ego and, male patriarchy, and just this sense of entitlement because of power comes with a role. And that power doesn't always necessarily do good, or it's not for the right reasons. And I guess law for my purpose was about serving and about finding justice for people. Yeah. And that wasn't always the case. It was about billable hours. It was about egos. It was about winning. And it wasn't about what was best for the outcome of the people that were in dispute, or that had something genuinely happen to them and deserved compensation. Yeah. And so that for me was a bit disheartening, because I'd studied for, 5 or 6 years. And then all of a sudden you get to this system of people that you aspired to be like, and it wasn't like that. So I think that was the first moment that made me sort of sit back and go, wow, okay, where do I belong? What does this look like? Because this isn't okay. Yeah. And it wasn't everyone, but it was certainly the majority of the industry. Yeah.
It's a funny one, because I just watched Painkiller on Netflix.
I haven't seen that. I'll have to note that. Yeah.
Oh, it's exactly what you're saying.
It's quite heartbreaking.
It's really heartbreaking. It's all about the OxyContin.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
For a pharmaceutical company, we all know.
Yes.
And how that operates, but the distraction that this drug brings to life.
And it's exactly just what you said, though. The system is just rife with corruption, and and we don't need to get on that track today, but I'm hearing what you're saying, and it can be disheartening. I think at that stage you either want to wake up and go, I don't want this, I don't want to be a part of this, or you go deeper into it.
Because I think with law, anyone who's had a touch with law for whatever reason, law in itself, as you say, that word justice is such a powerful word. And my own son, it's like a big thing for him, like fairness, justice. But you see that in here in a lot of our children, where things are fair, and like the first things where they learn not everything's fair, how that changes them. Yeah. But anyone who's touched with law, like the experience can be quite tumultuous, because of what you perceive to be fair isn't always represented because of the way the law system is set up. So it's a big construct to be working with, and to have heartfelt intentions, or to want to serve, as you say. To want to serve and go into that area is
tricky
to say to survive. Which way do you go?
Yes, which way?
And look, and look, there are some lawyers definitely that do a lot of good. It's not all lawyers.
Not that they're not doing good, but it's a big,
But it is tricky, because sometimes, the law also gets it wrong. And so there's the opportunity for laws to be overturned and rewritten, because we now know a lot more than we did back then. Yes. So, perspective and history can also help us. It's where we don't take advantage to change the law for a better outcome for society or for communities. That's frustrating to me.
So that was what shook you. That was your first bit of like, wow, the world's not as I thought it was going to, or thought it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So how did that feel? Because
amazing. I didn't make it. No, it felt satisfying, because I'd done my research. And to be fair, this was a property that there was a 17, 80-year-old people, 80-year-old that were living on, and they were trying to get it repossessed by a bank because they defaulted on something. And so I went through the history to understand why they defaulted, what had happened. And, their insurances, it was a long, and I still remember like a lot of the detail, because it had that much impact on me. But I was dead set against a bank repossessing this property from a 17, 80-year-old that had been there like their entire lives, up near Maxwell. So just up on the northern coast in New South Wales. And I'd met these people. They were the most loveliest people. And I was like, this is not okay. Yeah. Like, and I again don't remember all the like little nitty-gritty details, but the principle of the matter was they needed an opportunity to rectify it, and all they were caring about was the money and the property, selling it to get some money back. And I get there's commercial awareness and there's needs within that, but there's also the opportunity to give people space and time to rectify things that might not be able to move as quickly as others, or have time from money to come from other situations. Like, it doesn't always have to be so harsh and unjust,
cut and dry kind of thing.
Totally. Like the magic's in the grey sometimes. And people need to understand that it's people before process, in so many times. And, poor Jack's had a devastating challenge with that this year on and off. And that's a really hard lesson for a 12-year-old boy to learn.
Yeah.
But as I said to him, this character building in you now, resilience, will mean when you have that setback as an adult, it won't affect you as much as someone that's never had the chance to experience that. Because it's been the shittest year of your life, but it's also made you so much stronger.
Wow.
As much as you wish sometimes it hadn't been that way.
Yeah.
You've got to look at the plus side of it.
Yeah. We've been learning this one too, that everything's happening for us. Sometimes
not to us. Totally.
Yeah, sometimes you have to like scratch a little bit and look around corners and stuff if you're having trouble finding why it's happening for you, but everything is happening for you. You just got to find that piece of gold, and for him to learn that at such a young age is really powerful.
I'm still learning it.
Yeah, we all are. Yeah. It's so beautiful. So we've just kind of breezed through that area a little bit, but
so the first awakening was that court case where you got to realize
and it just made me probably question everything that I thought I knew to be true.
This is funny because the next question is, what did you notice? What did you first notice a shift in your thoughts about the world? How can you
boom? James answered that. And I think continuously throughout my career, it's funny. There were definitely areas and years throughout my career where my ego led me. And some of the roles that I had were amazing brands, amazing companies, and they're my early 20s to sort of late 20s, and it was pretty
heady.
What's the word? Sorry.
heady stuff, like like that.
But it was definitely stroking my ego to be asked to be in these roles at these particular companies, and it was a real privilege. But I guess I sort of had to put that aside sometimes and go, okay, what good can we do here for the guys? Because it's in a position of influence.
Yeah.
And yes, it was a great brand, but also, there are some companies you work at, not everybody has the same view or the same intention. And there were times that I definitely didn't always lead the best version of by the best version of myself. And, and I was still growing and learning, and I know I made mistakes along the way. But then there's other times I step back and go, I'm really proud that we left that legacy and that people felt better off because of that. And that sort of got to be my legacy, is leaving things in a situation where they're better than what they were before.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to ask the hard questions or challenge something because it was uncomfortable.
Yeah. On that note, was there any part of you that knew like that some of the things you were doing weren't right? Do you know, was there a part of you that was like, I know you said the ego was driving you, but was there any part of you that was like, was your body letting you know anything? Was there any thoughts around that? Or
yeah, actually, funny you should mention that. I think probably my body is almost my biggest source of feedback.
Yeah.
Because if I choose to not listen to myself, my body gives me very loud signals. So there were, probably several episodes of burnout or, various kinds of, I'm just trying to think what in particular. I had an autoimmune condition that popped. Actually, probably an autoimmune condition that arose at neutropenia. And I went through process of getting bloods, and actually they said to me, you had lymphoma. And I said, no. I said, not possible. And he was like, we're the doctors, let us do this. And they're searching around my lymph glands and all of this. And I was like, listen, I'm way out of alignment right now. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. I've been doing the wrong things. Yeah. I know what I need to do. Give me 3 months before you start me on these like drugs. Like, have I got that sort of thing? And he's like, well, yeah, because I can't find any lumps. And I'm like, and you won't. Yeah. And I literally was having blood tests every sort of 3 weeks, and my neutrophils were incredibly low, and gradually they started to creep back up to, 1 to 2 to 5. And he was like, so what have you done?
Low.
They were so low beforehand. They were significantly, like, they didn't exist. I was at high risk of infection, and but I was burnt out. Like, my soul wasn't doing work that was aligned to who I was.
That's why I asked, because I know that a lot of the people that come on the podcast, and it's for our listeners as well, is the body is the first sign,
Totally. It's the easiest sign to ignore, because you can take something to deal with it today, like Panadol or, cold and flu tablets or something, to just try and shut it down. But it's not until it gets louder and louder you sort of go, okay. And I'm much better with that now. So as soon as I get a sore throat, I'm like, okay, what am I not saying? I'm very connected with my chakra system, and what parts of my body are trying to tell me what. If something's hurting, literally my body will be like instantaneous feedback, and I listen to it then and there, and then I rectify it. So I haven't actually been sick for a while, significantly, unless it was related to something that I hadn't spoken about or acted upon. And I've said to my body, listen, I can't do this right now. It's not appropriate. Pick yourself back up, and we'll deal with that by this date. And almost talking to my body and, really shuffling its energy.
It's such a beautiful thing, and it's such a powerful way to, just keep pushing, like us, and especially as a mother and as a woman, we tend to do that.
Push so much. And
interesting in the way listening to you speaking, because even the way you were dialoguing with the doctor, like you knew yourself better than to just accept the verdict, if you say, of lymphoma, which would have been like, if you'd sort of gone, oh, okay, I'll take the medications, this and that, you could have gone down a track that would have been quite devastating and and unnecessary. But listening to yourself in that moment and going, no, I've got this, I'm going to back myself more, I'm going to tap back into here and out of headspace a little bit more, and have that conversation going on.
And it's funny, I don't think I even really knew what I was saying at the time. It just came out, and I was like, oh. And I could see him look at me, because he was in this black sort of ninja suit, and I was in emergency at North Shore, and I had no one with me, no family. Dan was overseas, and I remember him looking at me as if to say, I'm the doctor, don't be so arrogant. And I said, look, I didn't mean that to come out the way it did. I said, but I'm really confident that's not what it is.
Beautiful.
And I said, without saying, oh, I'm a witch. I know, and I'm not invincible. Like, I'm very, very aware of that. But I just knew that was not the right diagnosis. I don't know, I knew, but I knew.
That's so cool.
And the wisdom in knowing that, the wisdom in listening is the ultimate gift to self, isn't it? Because
totally,
once the body realizes as well, like, that you're listening, it starts to reach out to you even more, and is so willing to respond to better treatment, better respect, all those things. And the world of law, and that, I can imagine, like, when you talk about how fulfilling it was on so many levels, like, it's a very intellectual space, it's a very powerful space, and it's long hours, all of those things, it's very demanding of a person. So there was obviously a part of you that was very committed to being front and center in that journey.
Absolutely. And I think what I realized is I could do it, but I could do it in a different way. And so I left the corporate world, the legal world, for want of a better word, and I went in-house to a couple of companies. And I then did probably 5 years in-house with a couple of different fashion companies. And so that was probably, again, using law for an area that I was interested in or passionate about, but helping creative people navigate what they need to do legally to and that was, a few years with Subi, and then beach culture, gosh, it's really testing my memory. Anyway, whoever it was, but actually using it for good and just helping, really great people navigate what they need to do, commercially to build successful brands. But even today, even though I'm not practicing anymore, I still use mediation in every conversation I have. And if there's anyone I could say, law, going to a lawyer is kind of, or starting a legal lawsuit is one of the last resolutions. I would highly encourage, like, mediation needs to be encouraged more, because the only people that really win in a lawsuit are the lawyers and the fees. And people need to sit in a room and they need to talk. They need to share. And I heard something the other day, and it's like, even if you don't win, if you get the chance to talk, you feel like you've won because you've been heard. And I thought that was so powerful, because half the time people just want to feel heard, and then that reduces the necessity for them to win. But they feel like they've had a chance to share their perspective. And I think we could just do such a better system of mediating and reconciling disputes rather than the legal system. It's backed up for years anyway. Like, it takes years to get things, sorted. I look at child custody battles and nobody wins there. It's and the kids are the ones that suffer. And I think there's just so much, there could be such better outcomes if we were just more consciously thinking about what's the effect of the outcome going to have on the people that are, needing help here. And just, look at things more awareness, we're more awareness and conscious.
More like a win-win outcome than a win-loss or a loss-win, It's
and look, it may not even be a win-win, but it might be an acceptable one that people can go, it's not what I want, but I understand. It's like an acceptable situation, or, just something that people can live with and not carry around so much hurt and grief and pain and anger, because that doesn't do anyone any good either.
The density.
So so you went from the corporate law to HR, and then into more in-house with different brands. So, like, human resources in itself is a form of mediation, isn't it? To kind of be able to have, the team, the people involved in the business be, and have a language and a relationship that communicates with the corporate structure and the people at the top. There's a lot of energy invested in having that space be viable as well, isn't it? How was that for you, that space?
Amazing and challenging.
I was going to say, because you're working with some pretty high end, but also very like trendy kind of,
cool
brands.
companies.
That were kind of living on or near the edge of awakening and awareness and consciousness anyway. So were you
rebellious?
Rebellious, absolutely. So were you able to bring your own self into that work? Did you change?
Sometimes. There were certain you had to understand, I guess, where the areas could be pushed and what couldn't. The landscape of HR has changed significantly over the last 10 years, and I think traditionally they were very much the compliance handbrake, the policies, the procedures, and it was like to support the law. And now it's really becoming more about the employees work experience, and I guess there's more creative license to change language for the companies that are really connected with people before profit. That profit will come if you treat your people well. I think HR's a great vehicle for that, whereas some people still use it as a human resources, so they're managing the resources, and that's because they're operating in probably an old format, an old way, but that's the way that they know. So I sort of was fortunate enough to get opportunities to work with companies that were more progressive, where I got more freedom, and freedom's one of my biggest values. So without that freedom, I probably wouldn't have performed at my best. So I had a lot of creative license, a lot of trust, which was great, and really got the opportunity to understand what they needed from us. From my perspective, HR was there to serve, or the people and culture team was there to give advice or guidance or the tools that everybody on the front line needed to do their jobs better. And that was a real privilege, because we had different skills to them. We sometimes saw things differently, and so we could support them. But then I couldn't go and necessarily do their jobs every day, because that wasn't my natural skill set. Sometimes it's great to go and do a day, here and there, but I didn't have as much energy to probably be front facing as some of those guys that have more energy than I did. But I could think about things and sort of almost be that behind the scenes. I love being behind the scenes, because it's kind of, you just can shift, tweak, make things happen, and you just see it play out in front of you. That to me is really rewarding. I didn't necessarily like being front and center.
That's lovely. Now, I just want to ask too, we've talked about a lot of your work side. What was happening with you on the personal side? Like, were you in relationship? Like, this is going back to, we're going back a little while to, you know, when you're waking up and all that. Were you in relationship? Were you with somebody that was conscious and aware with you? How was it?
Very good question. Look, throughout law, you know, to my early mid-20s, you know, yeah, look, I had probably in my younger years, I had a couple of boyfriends that were quite special and sort of connected with, but then throughout sort of my 20s, not really. It was kind of like, you know, maybe I had a date here and there, but I wasn't interested. You know, there was no one that I met that was really worth me, like that I wanted to hang out with. I loved running. I loved, you know, I was part of the surf club, Bondi Surf Club. I wasn't probably till I met my now husband, Dan, and he was from the surf industry at the time, Piscean, so unconsciously conscious, if that makes sense, or consciously unconscious. Really, yeah, still we see things very differently. He's very scientific and like facts, information, you know, data to sort of validate things. I think he's accepted that he's, you know, married a witch, and that, you know, he sometimes feels like Daryl from Bewitched, and, you know, I just do all my magic stuff, and he's like, I don't get how or why that happens, but he's like, I just roll with it. So I think over the years he's gotten to know more about me as I've gotten to know more about me. And it's been tricky sometimes, because sometimes I can't explain to him why I see or feel or do or know what I know, but he trusts that, and I don't think he's ever not trusted that. But we've certainly had times where I've probably retreated into myself and gone, I don't actually know how to articulate to you what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what's going on in here, because I didn't understand it myself. But he's definitely been very patient with my spiraling, my journey.
This is so beautiful, because the reason why I wanted you to talk about this is because I think for our listeners, we've had so many women. Look, majority of the women we've had on have said, I got to the point where I had to leave my partner, right? And so there's this what do you call it? Feeling out there that if you're waking up that you're going to have to drop everything, and that means partners. But that's not necessarily the case. There's some men out there that are, whether they're aware, conscious, whatever, their purpose may be just to back the woman. Back the woman to hold space.
I definitely remember having those sort of feelings, you know, like along those lines, and I've probably spoken to you over the years about things. And I think somebody said to me, and I can't actually remember who it was, but they said, don't expect your partner to be everything. You have to have different things in different people to satisfy different needs. And I think I was expecting him to meet me on the same spiritual level I was at. And that, in fact, may not have been such a good thing, because I was so in the caterpillar goo of trying to work stuff out. If there were two of us there, you know, it may not have worked. And he's certainly been very stable and very consistent from I guess, in allowing me to explore all this and, you know, work out what was going on, what everything, you know, meant. And he has definitely been that stable, consistent, you know, Piscean kind of energy, stable energy. And I think I really appreciate that now, more in hindsight. But there were times I was like, I definitely remember thinking, well, what if he doesn't, you know, view things the same way as me? Is he my soulmate? Is he not? And all my advice would be to someone is don't act quickly on that. Let it sit. And, you know, if you still feel the same way in 6 months, you know, have a conversation with someone. But I also shared a lot with him, which was really hard. At the risk of sharing, it was like, well, it could have gone either way. But, you know, I think he's, and sometimes would say, I don't quite know what to do with this. So, but, you know, and I'm like, well, neither do I. But, you know, that's where it is. So,
it's so beautiful. I think what I'm getting from what you're saying, thank you for sharing that too, is that, you know, you just got to trust in you, you know, and be able to speak your truth, and, you know, hope that wherever it lands well. And you've obviously had Dan there, and it's landed well enough. You know? And it's that whole trust thing. It's like trust out there, but also you got to trust in here as well.
And I think also I started looking at all the good things. So it's really easy sometimes to get stuck on what they don't have.
Yeah.
Or like go, oh, I wish, I could talk to him about, when I first started talking to him about astrology and the houses, and he's like, so how many houses have we got in our investment portfolio now? It's like, and then he actually came to me one day and he's like, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't be paying you out about all this stuff because I realize it's important to you. And I was like, well, no, the fact that you can actually make a joke about it is a good thing because it means you're actually listening to me.
Yeah.
So that was good. But then I flipped it and went, don't focus on what he doesn't have, focus on all the good he does. And there's a lot of good.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm grateful for this, and all the stability and, consistency and generosity and love and all the good things. He's an amazing dad that he provides versus what wasn't there. And that I can still get some of that stuff from other girlfriends or, books or workshops or, yeah, so you know what I mean? I think you've got there were really hard times, hard times.
Yeah.
And it's probably been a journey of the last probably 4 or 5 years that have, that's probably been a bit of a cycle.
Would you say that's been one of your the biggest awakening for you?
Do you know, I wouldn't have thought of it as an awakening, but yeah, when you use those words in that perspective, yes, it would be.
Well, relationship, whether it's partner, sister, brother, mother, whoever, friendship can be our biggest mirror, and it's
absolutely, yeah.
And when you're in a tight relationship, like a partnership relationship,
yeah,
I think that's where we get our most growth from.
Yes. Yeah, true. I definitely think my kids have been some of my greatest teachers as well. Yeah. And, I love when I ask my kids for feedback, and particularly Jack, he's very articulate. And he's like, well, this was great, but this wasn't so good, Mum.
Yeah.
And what I thought, but what I thought was not important to him was actually really important, and vice versa. So things that I put so much energy and effort to didn't even wasn't on his radar. And then he'll send me little memes on Instagram because he's just got Instagram now. And he'll send me things and that's his way of communicating with me. And I love that because he's very deep, and there's a lot of messages in what he sends me.
Yeah.
He's a very unique soul. Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Fun to see that play out. And almost what I'm hearing too is a reflection on what you were saying before about when you're working in some of those corporations around when you had space to move and do what you do best, kind of what played out a bit in your relationship as well, where, you each had space to be what you did, who you were best.
Yes. Yeah.
And giving up on expecting somebody to be in the same footsteps as yourself, which we do a lot, because as you say, the journey of this, the soulmate or the, those things where we kind of want our relationship to be in the perfect picture. We create constructs around that takes away our freedom to be who we are and what we have to offer. And
so true.
Yeah. So it's and the whole thing around looking at what they do best rather than what they don't do immediately changes the whole playing field for where you both get to be seen. It's such a beautiful respect to show the other person that you're in a relationship with. Yeah. Amazing.
Have you had to change anything, Mish, with when you're going through this awakening phase, or it's not a phase but this awakening? Did you have to change anything in your world, in your life?
I think everything's changed 1 degree at a time.
Yeah.
There's been gradual changes which overall probably create a new change, if that makes sense. I look back at myself, when I was in some of the roles, and I don't think some of the people I worked with would I think there's been an evolution, if that makes sense. I think I've definitely softened. I was in a very masculine world for a very long time. I carried a real masculine energy. And I can see that now. But at the time, I thought masculine energy is what you needed to almost be successful. And that was me growing up in a legal world, in a corporate world. I was always the youngest and woman within any leadership team, and on a board, I was always either the only female or the youngest. significantly. And so that for me, I didn't really think much of it at the time, but looking back at it now, some days I might have been proud of myself, other days I might not have, but definitely now I'm a lot more aware and I'm softer. And so there's a lot more calm with me. There's a lot more, consideration and, awareness of how you genuinely make other people feel, not just externally being something and then not having your shit together behind the scenes, if that makes sense. Like it's probably been my biggest challenge, and the greatest success is when it's just the same everywhere you go. It just, flows. And when I'm in flow, I know there's calm, there's organization, there's consideration, but you have to surrender when you can't control things and you've got to let it go. Like Monday morning, I had to go to Sydney and Dan was in Sydney early on, and both my keys to my car were in his car in Sydney.
Oh, no.
And I was like, fuck, what, like, okay, it's
Too far for an Uber.
Way too far for an Uber. Anyway, I was with sort of a new client Monday, Tuesday, and I was like, okay, how do I do this? So anyway, was lucky enough that Mum and Dad had 2 cars up here. So I got one at there. I rang Dad and I'm like, I need you to please put some clothes on, come here, drop Jack at school, come back here, leave me your car, I'll drop you home, and then I need to take it to Sydney. Got to Sydney, day was great, and I was going to stay the night there. Dan dropped my keys off, except my keys to the apartment in Sydney were in my white car at Avoca. I was like, oh my God. So I just sat there and I was like, okay, like,
what's the message?
I need to be.
Why is this happening for me?
I needed to be at home that night. That was the message.
Sorry, we cut you off.
No, but that was, and I was like, what is going on here? And I don't often spend a lot of time away from the kids, but I was kind of looking forward to it. But at the same stage, I had this pull that they didn't want me to go, but I was like, no, and I'd pulled this card. I think it's still got it here actually. The night before, and this is what it said: Outlook not so good. That was the card for my week.
Oh my God.
And so I got home and Jack's like, so Mum, what's the lesson in this? Don't do cards. And I was like, thanks, buddy. But he actually needed me to do his makeup for the Tuesday morning for a school performance, and he didn't want Dad and Summer to do it. And so clearly that was the universe's way, or someone's way of saying me, you need to be home Tuesday morning. And I was like, it could have gone so many ways. And yes, there were a few 4-letter words, thrown out there. Yeah. But I laughed, and actually I really enjoyed the drive down and the drive back. I actually got in my car, and out of nowhere, your podcast with Zara, was it?
Yes. Yeah.
Came on, and I was like, and I actually meant to tell you that. And I haven't actually listened to one of your podcasts for a while, but it literally just came on the car, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm listening to this. And then another one came on about nurture and nature between someone. I'd never heard of him before. And I was like, what is going on? And so you just have to let go and go, oh my God, like this is hilarious.
And so isn't it amazing when you let go, how the space opens up. And with this again, we're talking about this a bit, how the space opens up when you let go and when you trust and when you surrender into, what's the best in the situation, as opposed to fighting it. Because if you'd been in a funk, if you'd been angry at everybody, how isolating that is for everybody, how disrupted it is, and nobody wins. But, totally. I love how honest your cards are. Outlook.
I was about to throw that deck in the bin.
I love that. It's just so beautiful how, it comes back to that, everything's happening for me. And when you can actually have the awareness to go, okay, why? Or even better, have a beautiful son that says, okay, Mum, why did that happen? It's just so precious. Those moments are worth, like I have moments that I have, that's quite a big one, what you had, like the keys left in the car. There could have been a lot of things just gone totally pear-shaped, but all your support was there. Yeah, all your support was there. Yeah. I know when that happens to me now, sometimes I cry because I'm like, that trust that we need to connect in with the universe and trust the guidance that's happening. I get teary now because I'm like,
that was the last time we were going to do this podcast, and I completely forgot about it because I'd had something happen to Jackson and I was in tears and I just couldn't talk. So exactly the same.
This is the journey that often we find ourselves on as women though too, is because we're like, what I was thinking about before when you're saying you had to go to Sydney for work, but then, you know, there's your family, and you're feeling that there's a sense, a part of you that's going that they need you, but you go, no, everything's fine, it's all under control, I'll just go and do what I need to do. It's a constant struggle of being in the role of our place in the world and our place in our world, you know, with what it means to have your family and to balance everything out with your creative, intellectual, you know, career paths, all these things. We're constantly,
and they're daily things. Like every family has those things happen, you know, constantly. And I think, you know, for years people would say, oh, there's a choice in how you react. I'm like, no, there's not. Like, you know, because I wasn't ready to see it. And there really is, you know, now. And I think that's probably a huge awakening moment as well, is that there actually is a choice. But sometimes you know, I remember going through perimenopause the last sort of 12 to 18 months as well. There probably wasn't a choice back then because I wasn't rational or in a rational state to make a choice.
Yeah.
But when you can balance out your hormones and the rest of everything else is, you know, relatively normal, there is a choice. But you've also got to be in that state, in the consciousness or awareness, to be able to see that there is a choice.
Absolutely. I love that. It's so beautiful what you just said. And it's so, you know, it's a beautiful opportunity for us women and men to tap into our intuition and to really honor that. You know, we're getting it all the time, but are we using it, listening to it, and building it? Because that's the only way that we can build. It's like a muscle. We just need to listen to it more and
totally.
Yeah.
And the thing with things like, you know, things like times of our lives when perimenopause and menopause comes along, it's an opportunity for evaluation of self and our world, because our hormones are our communication system of our body. So if we're, you know, it's a way of, if we're not in a harmonious communication, then the communication gets quite disruptive.
That's I've not heard it put so eloquently before. And it makes me feel like I've just completely been rewired or had a massive malfunction for the last 12 to 18 months.
God, I'm hearing you. Yeah. So interesting.
It's a big one. It's a really big one.
Huge. Yeah.
The
next question. Do you want to ask?
No, you ask. It's good. Yeah.
Okay. So this is I love this question because it can sway either way. But have you had to give up anything? Like people, foods, alcohol? I don't know. Have you decided?
Yeah. I think gradually. I mean, I've given up. I sort of gave up alcohol a long time ago in terms of the amount I used to drink. I mean, Dan doesn't drink anyway because of his health. And I just found, particularly through the perimenopause stage actually, that it was doing me more harm than good. And so now, again, it's a more conscious choice that I'll drink a lime and soda, or I might have a drink every now and then, but generally the next day I regret it because it actually lowers my vibration. And you might think it has the opposite effect at the time, but it's a fake vibration. It's really fake. And I think naturally there's just been some friendships that have there's been more space created, I think.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know there's probably a couple of friends, not that I owe an explanation to, but that I haven't probably gotten back to over a period of time. I haven't had the energy, I don't think. And, you know, I won't say too much, but yeah, there's definitely been some space created in some places. And I think in other areas, it's been a magnificent tribe attraction. And I've got just some absolutely like some women around me, mermaids, you know, angels, you know, souls that are just so enriching and easy and fluid. And it's really nice. I don't think I've ever had such a tight group of friends that I have now throughout any stage of my life, particularly female, which is really beautiful because I was always very much in the masculine world. All my friends growing up were men and boys. I was the girl amongst all the boys because there was less drama, less bullshit, and it was easy. I aligned with them more than I did the girls. Whereas now it's quite cool to want to have girl time. You know, I've never been one that's gone away with the girls ever. I've never done like a girls' weekend. I don't think even I've ever done one. Unless it's been like, I mean, I'm serious. Yeah, I'll be on the next plane to the Gold Coast.
Wow.
I just
Do you think that's
like
more
even doing the open. Sorry.
I was just going to say, do you think that's because you're more in your truth than ever before?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. But even everything I did, even coming to Open Hearted with you guys, I wanted Dan to come and share that. But I never felt I needed girl time away from Dan or away from the kids. I wanted to do things as a family, because I think that, and it's funny because I've got so many friends that go on girls' weekends like regularly. And I remember at one point sort of thinking, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't have that group of girls.
Yeah.
And we went to the Hunter Valley a few weekends ago, but with 2 other couples. And it was lovely. It was great. And it was no kids. But I just, I don't know. It is what it is. I think.
I'm hearing you. I totally get what you're saying. Because I think for me too, it's like a girls' weekend away would be on the drink, or drinking, kind of like some of my older friends. Where now it's like, no, a weekend away would be camping or hiking or
And some of those beautiful women do hike and ski paddle. So we jump in our skis and we go for a paddle. We've got a really great mums group and we run, me not so consistently at the moment, but they all run Tuesday and Thursday morning at 5:30. And that's sort of grown from 3 of us to 11 now mums.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because we just get that time to ourselves as women to share stories and just connect and before we then go back and have to be wives and mums, and we're just there. Someone might be having trouble with their daughter or son and is sharing something and someone else goes, oh, me too. One of them is a GP and it's like, oh, hey, maybe, go and talk about, it's just a really nice mix of, completely different souls. But just releasing energy, as we run in the morning and then go for a swim in the ocean, sometimes have a coffee and then, we're home by 6:30.
Yeah. That sounds like us.
Pretty efficient.
Yeah, it's beautiful to be around women that actually just want to talk about things that are meaningful or that, are not just surface gossip, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like
no drama.
As
soon as someone starts on the drama, I'm like, I'm out. I just remove myself because I'm very aware as to what raises my frequency and vibration now and what puts me in a great state and what absolutely empties me. And as soon as I start to feel that dropping, unless there's a genuine need there for that person might need something and they mean something to me, so they need help. Obviously that's different. I seem to not be attracting it as much anymore as well, which is great. You find the right people just come, you bump into at the right time, all of that stuff that, you talk about coincidences and, not being coincidences, but it just happens more when you're in the right place.
And I think it's too reflecting back on going back to little Michelle, when we're young and young people, children into teenage years, our peer groups, our friendship groups and everything. It's so many girls that have been in this seat with us have shared similar experiences where they've been more attracted to friendships with boys because it's been more about activities and play and doing things and not the gossip, the dramas, the emotional games and things that sort of go on, which is a part of growing up and peer groups and for whatever reason seems to be a part of growing up and separating out from that when you're already empathetic kind of sensitive child. It makes sense to go and have fun as opposed to try to swim amongst all of that emotion and drama.
It's very intense. I do remember periods of it just being really wow.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And a big one, because we do get caught up in different energies throughout our whole life. And I think it's just a beautiful indication of where we're at.
And I think too, reflecting on what you've done as a career, that was my point with bringing that up before, around with justice, mediation, HR. As a child, those natural tendencies to sort out people's dramas or want to be okay, let's get this right. I mean, it's overwhelming, isn't it? Because you can't. It's as a child, it's you're feeling all of this thing, and you don't have the tools or the skills so much to do anything about it, to help people feel better, to fix their problems, or you know, and when you have your children reflecting back now, like how wise they are, like nothing gives me greater joy than hearing one of my children say something like, you know, not, call me out, or like say,
I love it.
Whoa.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I miss that, and I need that, because I don't think we call each other out enough on the good or the not so good.
Yeah.
Jack calls me out on everything, like everything. And Dan never used to, but he's starting to a bit more now.
Yeah.
You know, like when I went to vote on the weekend, I had my yes badge on, and we walked in, and this guy with his big black no thing was like, oh, you should probably take your badge off. And I said, you should probably go up the end of the street. And it just came out of my mouth. And Dan was like, Mish, that was a bit harsh. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And so I came back to apologize to him, and he'd gone. And I was like, oh.
Down the end of the street.
Yeah, totally. Well, he just disappeared. He wasn't around. But I didn't mean it to come out. But it was just like, don't tell me what to do. And because I was probably feeling a bit sensitive, knowing that the outcome might be, you know, what it was.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the first times.
Now.
Sorry?
In a place where the real work can happen now.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I really hope so. But that was one of the first times I can recall Dan actually saying to me, Mish, that was a little bit, you know. I was like, oh.
Yeah. I kind of liked it. That's why that happened.
Totally. But I miss that. Like, I had my best friend who passed away, you know, 6 years ago from cancer. He was the only one that used to call me on my bullshit. And I miss him so much, because he would always say, that's your ego, not your soul, Mish. Like, pull your head in, you know, do things that feed your soul, listen to your soul, not your ego. And nobody does that. And we need to do that more to each other, and we need to call each other out and stuff. If like you were doing something that I didn't think was right, I could say, hey, Joe, don't know, like sort of getting a feeling that's quite not right. And you could be like, huh, fuck you, Mish. Like, you know, but okay.
But I know it's coming from love. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's exactly, it's coming from the right place. And I think we need to get better at doing that to each other and calling each other out on our bullshit, because that's how we improve.
Absolutely. And I think we've gone to a place where, you know, there's too much sensitivity in society around, you know, it's like everybody wins. Like, so you all get a first place medal, and it's like not the person who's won the race. And I understand the theory around that, but at the same time, you know, where's the, you know, I did my best. I got 16th, and I was really happy with that, because the other day I walked the whole race, you know.
Totally.
Where's the acknowledgement of what you actually did achieve, instead of being, you know, when my children were little, I was reflecting the other day, they'd do a drawing, and I had to choose which one I liked the best, or not what I liked the best, but what I thought was the best. And oh my God, that was.
I still get asked that, and it's traumatic.
Libra energy.
Yeah.
Totally. You know, and they get cranky because they didn't care who did the best one. They just wanted to see what I thought, you know.
I'm still dealing with that.
It's a tough one, but just on that, what we're just talking about too, I think when it comes from your child, and I don't know exactly what it is, but when it comes from your child, it's like you fully trust what they're saying.
Because it's no agenda.
Yeah. Sometimes when it comes to your partner, it's a little bit harder to take, you know. It's like, huh? You know, or whatever. But in general, I'm just saying, you know, when it comes from a child, it seems so pure and with so much love that you can't not have a look at it. Yes.
And I think that then comes back to like what we're that raising awareness and raising consciousness around our relationships, how we perceive the person we're in relationship with, how we judge what they're saying to us. And, you know, whether it comes from a child, we don't usually judge them in the way we judge our partner, or we judge our mother, or we judge our age, you know. And
the other thing too, just on that part about being able to call each other out, it's funny, this is my Libran balancing coming through. Because I've been the one person all my life that's been so find it so easily to call people out. And I'm learning that it's not such a good thing anymore, that I actually just need to let people move along in their own lane and
interesting you say that.
Learn the lesson that they need to learn on their own, because you know, the way that I view it is not the way that they view it. And
correct.
And so it's a very what do you call it, slopey kind of
slippery slope.
I so agree with that. And there definitely are moments, but I think where I do that, and so I see things, or I know I might have, and I'm like, no, not my position to say that or do that. But I enjoy it when the people who I respect call me out, because sometimes I might not see how I come across, or, you know, and that's okay. But I know there's times when other people also aren't at their best. And sometimes we make this assumption that we're always all our best. And then if somebody isn't at their best and they say or do something wrong, that they're a dickhead, you know, and it's like, that's not necessarily always the case. They just might be having a bad day. That they're doing the best they can in that moment. So I think, it's really interesting. Yes, I couldn't agree more that there are times and places not to call people out, because they also don't need that, or they don't have the resilience to actually hear that right now. Or they need to work it out on their own, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Because we touched on before, like around the energies that play at the moment around the eclipse, which, you know, the solar eclipse being the living energy, and like there's a lot of energy around relationships at the moment. Like there's a really open space for us to explore our relationships and how we are in relationship to, you know, the people around us, the earth that we walk on, you know, how we express ourselves, and expect what our expectations are back in response to how we expressing ourselves. So how for you, like, because working in the way that, you know, you've shared with us, being like, you know, in this corporate, you know, intellectual space, but also a highly highly intellectually wise, emotional space, and working with like chakras and esoteric things like astrology in what you do, how do you find like seasonal changes, energetic portals and windows of opportunity? How does that come into what you're doing? Do you kind of bring that in the way you're expressing with your clients or with your family? Two different.
You know, I saw my first portal the other day, and I haven't actually told anyone this yet because I'm not quite sure it is what I saw or I thought I saw, but I'll park that for a moment. But I'm still processing and digesting that. It was pretty surreal.
Now you've
and
got
it was a phone, and it was a cloud. So there was literally a mobile phone there, and then there was a cloud, like it was the mobile phone cover, so the back of the mobile phone and a cloud. So I'm not quite sure what it means, but it was like literally huge in my room, like at the end of my bed, and it was just like a massive like portal with, and I was like, and I just looked at it, and I was like just anyway, that's going to sound, I'm not on drugs, I wasn't taking anything.
So were you waking up, or were you asleep, or what were you doing?
I was going to bed. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was going to bed.
There's a lot of amazing energy at play at the moment, and the more we sit and seep into it, the more it's opening and offering.
And I've been very consciously grounding and calling in my energy every night and just sort of setting the protection up. So I definitely feel there's more going on. Like I know I'm sort of, when I'm willing to see or not see, you know, there's definitely more around me at the moment, but it's, again, you know, using the language to make sure it's good energy and that it's supportive and it's safe and protective is important. I've just completely forgotten the question.
Because when we've spoken, you shared, like, there was a series, speaking of series, there was a series where this girl played chess and she could see the moves.
Oh, yes.
Mind. And you were explaining that's kind of how you work in your mind as well. And
it's funny, my son sees out in the rugby field. So he stands back quite often on the rugby field, and he's like, Mum, I just see plays. And he just, you know, and I've actually suggested to him that he watch that series with me over the holidays, because I think it's exactly what he does, but from a rugby position. But yeah, look, I mean, I used to walk into a boardroom and just, I guess, sometimes it's hard. You don't know why you know what you know, or you don't know if it's your thoughts or if it's messages being channeled to you, or I see solutions and I'd see things playing out. I'd maybe even get an understanding of an agenda that someone would have, so I'd know the right question to ask for them to then have to answer. Sometimes it would be uncomfortable, sometimes it would be appropriate. Learning, I think, to your point, Jo, when to ask the question, when to let things sit, has been incredibly difficult, because at first I was probably unaware what I was saying. It was all just coming through me, and I'd be like, whoa, I didn't mean that to sort of come out the way it did, or so I've had to really sit with it and go, no, don't need to mention that now. Yep, that's important. That's okay. And probably less sometimes is more.
Yeah.
Until they get comfortable and build trust with who I am. And, you know, like I had a client message me, I've just been in Sydney with for 2 days last night, and he was like, have you got time to catch up, you know, tomorrow morning? And this isn't ego related, but this is just like, he's like, I cannot believe you've seen and done all you have in 2 days. Yeah. He's like, that is just phenomenal that you've met with these people. You've got such a quick read on them to be able to articulate everything you've seen. He's like, it's, you know, we're so grateful. We're so appreciative and grateful of, you know, and I was like, oh, like it wasn't actually, to me, didn't really seem like a big deal. Yeah. It was just getting to know their team and feedback on what I saw and what the gaps are coming up to Christmas, which is their biggest period. And so that was really cool, you know, to have that. And then literally within the space of half an hour, there's a job going on the Central Coast at the moment as a CEO for a non-for-profit. And I had like 5 people message it to me over the last week going, oh my gosh, we need you in this role. We need you in this role. And I just started laughing, and I'm like, oh my God, Dan. Like, and I said, look, it's not my time right now. I said, I'm very passionate about the organization, but I don't feel it's right now, because I'm really enjoying where I'm at. I'm working with some magnificent like clients at the moment that are so aligned and just genuinely want help to be better people and to do better. And I said, that's where I need to be right now.
It's so
it's
lovely
so interesting, though. Yeah.
And you're also doing everything that you love, but you're and it's seeping into the world that you know. You know, it's like this beautiful, you know.
But there's so much more openness from a lot of corporate companies now than there ever was. And I think their awareness is, you know, growing as they grow as individuals as well, perhaps. And there genuinely are leaders that want the best for their employees, because they know their employees are actually going to pass that on to their clients or their guests. And people sometimes say that, but then you walk into a business and you're like, yeah, I don't know, what you're saying, what you're doing isn't quite aligned here. But there are companies where that genuinely exists. And for me, that is refreshing. And they're the ones that I just want to keep attracting, because they're the ones that I can genuinely support, because the energy is aligned. It's not pushing energy up a hill where there's resistance. And that will, I think that's the difference between the burnout and my body just going, hey, you're giving all this energy, but there's too much negative coming back at you because the resistance genuinely isn't there. So I need to let them go and then just keep working with the ones that genuinely want help to be better.
Well, I know that when it comes to any type of healing, and we've had many healers on the podcast, they always talk about the best healing is done when there's an exchange of energy.
Yes, I listened to that yesterday, actually. It was so funny when I was listening to that podcast driving to Sydney. I think it obviously came on because I needed to hear it. And I meant to message you at the time, but I didn't. And it was so funny, and I was listening to everything
so it's good
saying. True. It was everything she was saying. I was like, yes. Like it was just perfect timing, as you thought. Yeah.
As always.
And it's the thing of like, we go with the least resistance. Like there's so much change possible then, because like, you know, the corporate world, I think there's incredible companies out there, and to be working with that, it refines down to less and less numbers of the old corporate structures that are resistant. Eventually there'll be this tiny little island of those type of structures. And they'll just, I think, as you in your words, they'll just crumble of their own accord, because there'll be nowhere for them to play out, because everyone else will be in a different space arena.
With the age of Aquarius now, like bullshit is coming to the surface. And we've seen that happen with Qantas, with PwC, with Deloitte, and all those other companies where, you know, the tax fraud has been hidden for so many years, and people have consciously been making the wrong choices, yet receiving, you know, $1 million payouts. Like that has to stop now. And I think boards are even a lot more aware, chairs are a lot more aware that the spotlight is on them. They have to make good ethical decisions. And if they don't, then they're going to get caught out. And it's not, you know, if, but when, because it will happen.
That's been talked about for a long time now. And the time is now.
And then energy exchange too, like from, say, the consumer point of view, you know, working, you know, purchasing, making conscious choices. Like many people are going to the markets and buying fresh fruit and produce. What that means to them, how they are relating to their foods and things like that. Very simple levels, but even buying clothing from, ethical companies or companies that give back or companies that are making great choices with their teams, with their methods of production and sourcing and things like that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
That creates a huge dynamic on an energy level, and on a, with all the talk around the circular economy with recycling and things like that is getting so much louder, but the energy's being circular as well, with how we are operating as consumers and how we're operating as companies.
Yeah, that's so true. That's beautifully articulated. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, so true.
Very exciting. It's very exciting times.
All right, we're gonna move it along.
I'm like, we're still going.
Yeah,
I want to ask.
So, what do you do now to support yourself for staying in the moment?
Staying in the moment. Oh God.
I saw the look on your face.
Yeah.
Which moment?
That moment.
It probably depends. Sometimes I might sage myself.
Yeah.
Sometimes I use a lot of smell. Smell is a really strong sense for me. The sun, drinking tea, anything that grounds me, because sometimes my nervous system can get really excited quite quickly. So I have to calm it consciously.
Yeah.
Because,
Hearing you.
So, I think anything smell related, like sage spray, sage, anything that just brings calm. So I have, I'm in a very state of like cleaning out the house and removing a lot of clutter and mess and really simplifying things. And really purposely and consciously connecting with what brings me joy and what I need. I actually wrote down the other night, and I thought it was really cool, asking myself the question, does this actually support the life that I'm trying to create? And, that question for me is like my epicenter of, and it just came to me in bed the other night. And I thought that is my go. Like, if it is going to support the life I'm trying to create, then it stays or it happens. If it doesn't, I let it go. And so that's kind of my guide, my inner compass now for, do I work with these people? Do I go there? Do I want to see those people? Do I need to buy that? Whatever it might be. It's like, is this going to help me support the life I'm trying to create or not?
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's
say that. Can you say that again? Just say it one more time slowly.
Does this support the life I'm trying to create?
It's so beautiful, and it's just keeping everything clean. As in, when I say clean, the mind clean. Because there's so much monkey mind and clutter in the mind at the moment too. It's all of those little things help keep the mind clear. Yeah, absolutely. And just, thoughts, words, all those things. And it's very easy to get down a rabbit hole that's not helpful. Yeah. So catching yourself and going, become, realign. Beautiful.
It's a very clear question because at the moment I'm doing a similar thing with my house and some belongings.
Of course you are.
And when you sit in front of this box of stuff and you go, does this support the life I am trying to create? Immediately it cuts all the cords of attachment to pieces and things that actually just take up space.
I threw out a whole heap of my school stuff, like when mum and dad moved out of their house, and mum was quite upset. She's like, darling, like, don't you want to keep all of that stuff, that they're memories of. And I pulled out a couple of things and I said, no, mum, I said, they were the most awkward years of my life and they need to go. And she was like, oh, I think she was devastated, but I was like, no, that doesn't help me moving forward. There's a couple of photos here. I can keep the rest of it. I don't need.
Yeah. It's a lot of that's a beautiful way.
It's very discerning.
Yeah.
God help me when my parents pass away. I hope it's not anytime soon, but my God, the shit I've got to go through.
Yeah.
Anyway, deal with that when it happens.
There are other legacies that we get left with that we can keep alive.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So last question, thank you, lovely.
Woo.
How do you see the world, and what do you see next for us through your eyes? That's a really hard question, isn't it? I'm going to opt to choose the world that I'd like to create for the kids to live in and focus on
bringing more good in versus what they're being exposed to now and some of the heart-wrenching situations that are occurring. I wrote a post the other day and said, I would just love to have a global megaphone that I could play this song that my daughter's learning at school called Everyone Belongs. And it's the most beautiful song about everyone belongs, where you can sing this song and live in harmony. And it's just like they're teaching this to kids that are 8, which is so important. And I wish we could just put it on a global megaphone and just go, guys, we all belong here. Like, you know, so I'd love to create a world where there are more people that are conscious and aware about the impact they can have about doing good and being a good human, and that, you know, being a great leader starts with just being a good human first, and that we've all got to be responsible for our actions and our behaviors. You know, I'd like to think that we're just a bit more gentle with each other and people are kinder to each other, and you know, we all live on yachts and sail around the world. I don't know. That's my retirement. I'd
like
like
where you're going.
Happy places. We all get to
you
be
know,
happy.
just good experiences, good times. You know, there's always, I think we focus so much, you know, because we're always brought all the horrific things that are happening around the world. There's also some beautiful things, but there are some absolutely harrowing things that a lot of us are struggling to comprehend at the moment that's going on, and it's unconscionable, and it's, you know, I don't think any of us can accept or comprehend it on any level, that there's so much generational anger and conflict there. But if we focus on that, it's going to multiply, you know. And so trying to, I guess, send the energy to heal that and create some kind of calm around them is, I guess, what I've been doing, and trying to direct energy to try and connect with some of those angry people and help them just diffuse the need to destroy others' lives. And I'd love to think that we're creating generations now that are going to be more aware and don't want to see this type of stuff happen again, and be better leaders and want to do more good. You know,
it's all about the awareness, isn't it? I think, you know, it's staying in our own lane, doing the best that we can to be the best versions of ourselves. If only we could wish that upon you know, those other people, because they obviously aren't aware of what they're doing and the impact they're having.
It's a disconnection, isn't it? It's hard to be aware when you're so infused with so much
and traumatized, because this, you know, this is generational stuff that they would have been exposed to by their parents or their parents' parents, and you know, now it's their kids, and it's all the kids sort of, you know. I saw an interview the other day of a grandmother who was, you know, a Holocaust survivor, just saying, I cannot, you know, she's lost most of her family. And she's like, I never thought my family would have to experience this, and that I would lose my family in this stage when I was, you know, survived the Holocaust. And I looked at it with just such a different perspective and was like, wow, like this is not okay. You know, it's not okay at any level, but again, trying to move away from, you know, how do we create more good? It's by showing the kids there is another choice. And there is another way, and educating people that don't know what they don't know, and just leading by example. And the word's a bit cheesy for me, leading by example, but it's just do good, and it will encourage others to do good. You know?
Because it always blows me away that such a small number of people can tell such an incredible, huge number of people what to do. And when it's wrong. And every level we still do it out of fear,
I think that's the thing, part staying in your own lane, isn't it? Using your discernment.
Well, I listened to Bobby Kennedy speaking with Aubrey Marcus the other day, and some of the things he was saying about running as independent, and you just go, he's speaking common human values here, where our attention should be fully anyway. Why is talking about conscious leadership, where are we? Why is this not the conversation all our leaders are having? And hearing yourself speaking, Michelle, like when 5 people are putting you forward for the CEO of the non-for-profit, you can see why, because you're totally in that space of recognizing
creating change.
What creating change is about, and leadership skills are really based on. And I think that's something where our focus, like with the pain and the trauma that is happening in so many places in the world so virulently at the moment, our most obvious thing to be seen should be, why are we not creating incredible change at this time around what's happening? How can this be a repeat of things from the past? Why are we still accepting this?
Because we haven't learned the lesson yet. That's why.
Totally. But I always say,
Yeah,
goes back to a quote that, and I never get it right, but, you know, never underestimate the power of one person. Like, look what a mosquito can do to one person overnight. And I was like, I never get the quite words right, but you get the analogy behind it. And I was like, "Oh, that is so true." You know, and so
you just quantified why mosquitoes are here on Earth.
Totally. To remind us of their power. And then I feel bad of killing them, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, you're either going to eat me or I kill you. Not that I do, all the time, but yeah,
so
no.
Do you find, when you're speaking before around like the water as a medium for you and your family, like, do you find, and the saging, the cleansing and smell, do you find like meditation as a tool that helps with, you know, that part of you that sees and envisions, as well as is intellectually very active?
I used to meditate more than I do now, and a completely different conversation. I started that as a result of having postnatal depression with Jack, so that was 12 years ago. But I think I do enough quieter things that I don't feel drawn to meditate now. So meditate for me might be driving in the car, listening to something. It might be diving under a wave. It might be paddling in my ski. It's doing something where I'm quietening the mind, but it might not be the traditional meditation. It might be putting on, you know, Spirit Bird by Xavier Rudd, and just like dancing or moving, or just, you know, doing something that's shifting. But I'm getting better at resting, but it's not something I find easy. Yeah, like a hot bath for me is much more enjoyable than sitting still meditating.
That's beautiful. I love that you've said that, because it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't, you don't have to sit and meditate for you to be a aware, conscious person. It's like, that's just, you know, it might be a swim for someone, and it might be sitting in stillness for another.
I think the best meditation I've ever had was when I was hydrofoiling on Brisbane water. I was like, this is as good as it gets. Like, if I was to die doing something, it would be hydrofoiling. It was next level. I took Jack, and I was like, if I had spare $20,000, it'd be the first thing I'd go and buy.
Wow.
It was, honestly, I have never felt so free on top of the water, flying. And I was just like, it was like I was invincible. That to me was probably the highest frequency kind of vibes I've done in years. It was phenomenal. So, if you haven't done it, do it.
Okay, beautiful. Well, because looking at we just have to mention your gorgeous earrings. This whole the energy you're talking around, then it just feels like tapping into that, you know.
Should I put my other one back on?
They are divine.
The other one we did before.
Oh no, that's the whole.
So cool, isn't it?
But listeners, please go check out this on podcast on our YouTube, because actually stay like that. We're going to get a photo.
That's so funny. I'm going to ask her to make me a single one now.
It looks like the priestess that you are.
Oh, yeah. Can't get it to stay now.
Absolutely. Right? Priestess. Definitely.
You have to send it to me. That's hilarious. She'll have a great laugh.
All right. Well, we're going to have to turn it off and over now.
I know.
So amazing. It's flown. It literally has flown. We've loved having you on. And for our listeners, if anyone's interested in reaching out to Mish, we'll put all the details at the end of the podcast. And thank you so much.
Just in the middle of
it's been so fun. Thank you. I kind of wish I was sitting there in the studio to be able to give you a hug, but another time.
It'll happen soon. I know.
Yep, it will.
Thanks so much, Mish.
You're welcome. Thanks, lovely. Bye. You too.
Bye.